Hilda, Chapter 8. The Rain is to Blame, Part 2. I didn't know where they were being taken, but my heart raced as the officers moved through the train car, their presence heavy and oppressive. They had returned, and this time they were checking each and every one of us, inspecting our belongings with a scrutinising gaze that sent a chill down my spine. Bauer was a far better actress than I was. I watched her as she prepared to face the officer approaching us. She took a deep breath and composed herself, her expression calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. When the officer reached her row, she opened her bag, revealing the pots and plates nestled inside. A great shield, I thought. Just some stuff I'm taking back to my mother's home, she explained, her voice steady and clear. The officer raised an eyebrow, but Bauer maintained eye contact, her demeanor reassuring and confident. I held my breath, willing the officer to buy her story, and after a moment of hesitation, he nodded, moving on to me. My own bag lay beside me, a jumble of belongings that felt painfully inadequate. In the chaos of last night packing, Bauer had shoved in a half-knitted scarf into it, a great shield to show me as a stupid teenager with my stupid projects. The officer continued down the aisle, his expression inscrutable as he rifled through the bags, turning over clothes and personal items. As the officer reached the last person in our row, I breathed out, relief floating through me, but it was fleeting. The tension remained thick in the air, a constant reminder that we were walking a tightrope over a chasm of uncertainty. With every moment that passed, the threat of discovery loomed larger, and I knew that any sleep could shatter the fragile safety we had managed to maintain. The next hours passed in a complete silence, the weight of unspoken fears hanging heavily between us. Neither I nor Bauer dared to break the silence. We just sat there, staring out the blur of the countryside rushing past. The landscape shifted from rolling hills to dense forests, but all I could focus on was the tension in the air, growing tighter with every passing mile. Finally, it was Bauer who broke the silence. Listen, if we were separated, her voice was low, almost hesitant. I immediately cut her off, instinctively. No, we won't. She glanced at me, a mixture of frustration and resignation in her eyes. I said if. We won't, I insisted again, my tone firmer this time. The thought of being apart from her was unbearable, and I did not want to entertain it. But she didn't seem to care about my reassurance. Instead, she reached into the inside of pocket of her jacket, and I felt my heart skip a beat. When she pulled out a gun, the reality of her situation hit me like a slap. I stared at it, wide-eyed, as she handed it to me. I guess it's safer if it stays with you, she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. I remained silent, grappling with the weight of the firearm in my hands. After a pause, I hesitated before asking, why not you? She met my gaze, her expression unwavering. Well, you're younger, faster. The words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of disbelief and anger bubble up inside me. I swallowed hard, tucking the gun into the back pocket of my pants. The cold metal pressed against my skin, a reminder of the danger we were in and the choices we were being forced to make. I don't like this, I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. I know, she replied, her gaze returning to the window. But we need to be prepared for anything. Her tone was calm, but I could sense the underlying worry. As we continued to ride in silence, I felt a rush of emotion swirling within me, fear, uncertainty, and a fierce desire to protect the only person who meant anything to me. I wanted to be strong, to be capable, but the weight of the gun was a strict reminder of how precarious our situation truly was. I looked at her, the way her gaze was fixed outside, seemingly lost in the rhythm of the passing landscape. The train jolted slightly, and I felt a wave of emotion rush over me. I can't imagine I'm doing this with you, I admitted, the gravity of her situation settling deeper in my chest. She turned back to me, a smile breaking across her face, lighting up her features. You hated me at first, didn't you? I couldn't help but smile and nod, the memory of our early encounters flashing through my mind. But I loved your rebellious attitude from the beginning, she replied, her voice warm and teasing, pulling me back into the moment. A feeling of warmth spread through me at her words. Can I live with you after everything is over? I asked, my voice soft, almost tentative. I needed to know that there was something waiting for us at the end of this treacherous path. She paused, her expression shifting as she stared into my eyes, her smile deepening. I'll always be your home, she said, her voice steady and full of promise. I looked at her, searching for the right words, but I couldn't come up with anything. The weight of her declaration settled around us, a fragile yet profound bond forged in this chaotic journey. I felt a surge of affection mixed with fear, a desire for safety in a world that felt anything but secure. I wanted to believe her, to believe that no matter what lay ahead, we would find a way back to each other. In the quiet of the train, with the landscape rushing by, I held on to her words, the warmth of our connection anchoring me against the uncertainty of the future. Nearing the Swiss border, we disembarked from the train in an isolated stop, the chill of the early morning air hitting me like a slap. Power's hand gripped mine tightly as we moved quickly to the edge of the platform. The dense forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, and I felt a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through my veins. Our contact, a weary man with a scarfy beard and intense eyes, gestured for us to follow him into the thicket. Stay close and move quietly, he instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. The guards patrolled these woods frequently. I nodded, my heart racing as I glanced around. The station was eerily quiet, the distant sound of the train fading away. We stepped into the underbrush, the smell of damp earth and pine enveloping us. Bauer kept close to my side, her presence a steadying force against the unease tightening in my chest. As we ventured deeper into the forest, the trees pressing in around us, their trunks towering like silent sentinels, the light filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. I could hear the crunch of twigs underfoot, the rustle of leaves as we moved. My mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead, but I forced myself to focus on each step, breathing in time with the steady thump of my heart. Keep your voices down, our contact urged as we walked, glancing back at us with a warning look. The tension in the air was palpable, and I felt the weight of our situation pressing down on me. I couldn't shake the image of the guards patrolling the area, their boots crunching on the ground as they searched for escapees like us. Suddenly, the sound of rustling leaves nearby made us all freeze. My heart pounded in my chest as I exchanged a worried glance at Bauer. Our contact raised a hand, signaling for us to remain silent. I held my breath, straining to listen as the noise grew closer. Would the guards find us here? But then, as quickly as the tension had risen, it faded. A rabbit darted out from behind a bush, bounding away into the underbush. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, my pulse still racing. We resumed our journey, more cautious now, aware that danger lurked just beyond our sight. The forest felt like a labyrinth, twisting and turning as we navigated the undergrowth. Bauer walked beside me, her presence a comforting anchor as we pressed forward. I tried to push away the fear and uncertainty swirling in my mind. I had to trust that we would make it, that we would find a way to free them. With each step, I felt the weight of our journey pressing down on me, but I also felt a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. We were on the cusp of something new, a chance for safety and a future beyond the gasp of operation. I held tightly to Bauer's hand, a silent will passing between us as we forged ahead into the unknown. They moved in near silence, shadows stretching around us in the faint moonlight. Bauer gripped my hand tightly, occasionally glancing down at me, reassuring me with a nod. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig sent jolts of fear through my body as I clung to her coat, my heart racing with every sound. The man in front of us started to drink from his water bottle, the quiet slushing of liquid making my throat feel parched. I turned to Power, my voice barely above a whisper. Do we have water? The man turned back to us, his face entirely covered with a scarf, leaving only his eyes visible. He looked at me for a moment before offering his bottle. Bauer quickly intervened, her tone polite yet firm. Thank you, sir. We've got one here. She handed me a bottle from her pack, and I could feel my spirits lift just a little at the gesture. As we continued, I noticed a man walking slower now, creating a gap between us and the rest of the group. I tried to lighten the mood, desperate for a moment of levity amidst the attention. I guess we're the tired trio now, I said with a small smile, hoping to ease the heaviness that hung in the air. Bauer chuckled softly, the sound a soothing balm against my nerves. I looked up at the clouds in the sky, their dark edges threatening rain. With a sigh, I took Bauer's hand and said, I just hope it doesn't rain. The group was a few steps ahead of us, their figures silhouetted against the dim light filtering through the trees. Bauer glanced at me, a reassuring smile on her lips. We just get wet, nothing will happen. Come on, my feet hurt, I protested, my voice tinged with exasperation. I can't stand being wet. Without a word, Bauer hugged me tightly as we walked, her warmth enveloping me. It felt safe, even amidst the uncertainty of our journey. As I leaned into her, I started to talk, feeling the surge of emotion bubbling up. Did I ever tell you how much I like you? She looked down at me, her eyes softening. A smile spread across her face, and she held onto me tighter. In that moment, I felt a mix of warmth and sadness. I could sense the man walking ahead of us glancing back in our direction, and I couldn't help but wonder if he had a loved one he'd had to left behind. Did he miss someone? Did he share the same longing for a future that felt increasingly uncertain? I heard a murmur, low and haunting, weaving through the stillness of the night. It was a tune I recognized, one that echoed in my mind from distant memories. Was it the song my dad used to sing when we camped out together? The five of us huddled around the crackling fire, his voice mixing with the sound of the forest. Yes, he kept singing it, and I felt transported back to that time. 5-year-old Hilda jumping up and down with delight as Hans and Karl wrestled over their football, the sun shining brightly above us. Mom was in the background, preparing lunch, her laughter mingling with Dad's singing. I could even picture him, a cigarette dancing from his lips, the smoke curling up into the sky as he watched us, pride radiating from his face. But just as quickly as the nostalgia washed over me, reality crashed back in. I turned my head slightly back to the man, and there he was. He was actually my father. I froze where I stood, the world around me narrowing to a single point, his face. I clutched Bauer's hand as hard as I could, my grip instinctive and desperate, just like a child does when she's in danger. All I could see was my father, standing there like a ghost. He looked back at me, the corners of his mouth turning slightly as he opened his shawl, revealing the full extent of his presence. I could see his face now. No, he wasn't a black man. His eyes were painted with black. The rest of his face was pale, and then he spoke, his voice a low, twisted echo of familiarity. I don't think it was a good idea to leave your theater makeup instruments at home. The words hung heavy in the air, laced with a mix of disappointment and accusation. They struck me like a physical blow, and I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me. I didn't see Bauer beside me anymore. I couldn't process where I was or what was happening. All I could do was scream. Help! The group turned at my voice, their eyes widening as they took in the scene. They saw my father standing there, gun in hand. In that moment, time seemed to stretch. I could feel the weight of fear and disbelief pressing down on us all. Then it happened. Our leader reacted first, a flicker of instinct igniting within him. He reached for his own weapon, and before I could comprehend the chaos unfolding, he raised it, aiming directly at my father. Get down, he shouted, and the air erupted with the defeating crack of gunfire. I barely had time to register the sound before everything exploded into chaos. My father ducked and returned fire, the echoing shot piercing through the air. The forest became a cacophony of screams and shouts as the group scattered. Run! Our leader yelled again, but the words barely penetrated my stunned mind. My eyes were locked onto the scene, my heart pounding in my chest as the reality of the moment sunk in. The rest of the group was already fleeing into the dense underbrush, panic driving them forward as they abounded any semblance of order. I felt power tugging at my arm, but I was still trapped in that moment, caught between past and present. The haunting image of my father etched into my mind, and then we both started to run. The gunfire stopped me and Bauer, our hearts pounding. My father stood before us, rage boiling beneath the surface. "Walk, and I'll kill you!" he spat, the gun aimed directly at Bauer. Bauer turned slowly to face him, hands raised in surrender. I could see her resolve, a flicker of defiance in her eyes despite the danger. "Lower the gun," she urged, her voice steady but edged with tension. "You don't understand the danger Hilda is in if we stay here." "You've led her astray," he roared, his anger exploding into accusations. "You've torn this family apart. You're aiding traitors." His words dripped with venom, each one a knife twisting deeper into my heart. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't just stand there, not anymore. "You raised a traitor, father!" I screamed, my voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "She didn't motivate me to be this way. You raised a traitor. Look at you!" He faltered for a moment, surprise flickering across his face. I stepped forward, anger and pain fueling my words. "You think you have the power by holding a gun? You're nothing, father. You've lost everything. You're nothing." Tears streamed down my face as the realization settled in, my voice trembling as I continued. "You killed your family. You killed your family because of a motherfucker who's ruining Germany and families? You didn't just abandon us. You've betrayed us. You chose this bad and look where it led you. Your sons are dead. Your daughter ran away because she was scared of getting killed." His expression shifted, anger mingling with confusion and pain. I could see the tears welling in his eyes, reflecting my own sorrow and despair. The moment hung between us, a fragile breach of shared heartbreak, yet we were worlds apart. "I loved you," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice, but I shook my head, refusing to back down. "No! You lost your family the moment you picked up that gun." My voice rang out, raw and filled with grief. "You made your choice." Silence settled in, heavy and suffocating. The echoes of our confrontation lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of what had been lost. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. We were beyond reconciliation. We were two broken souls. His expression shifted, and for the first time, I saw something beyond anger in his eyes, something darker, something bitter. His hatred for Bauer wasn't just because she didn't share his beliefs. No, it was deeper than that. He resented her because he could never be her. He could never love the way she did, never feel the same quiet strength that radiated from her. He could never understand her abhorrence for violence, her detest for guns and wars, or the way she cherished life, even in the darkest moments. He could never understand what it meant to be a family. And then, without a warning, he raised his arm, and with a single, ruthless click, he shot her. I barely heard the crack of the gun over the rush of blood pounding in my ears. All I could see was Bauer crumpling to the ground, her face frozen in a moment of surprise, a flash of pain crossing her eyes. In a surge of fury, I reached for the gun she'd pressed into my hands just hours earlier. Did she know I'd need it for this? That I'd use it against her killer? I aimed, stealing my grip as best as I could. My father's eyes widened, but I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger, the shot piercing the air between us, and then I shot again and again, 4 times in total. Each shot landed with a finality, every echo searing into my mind. I stepped closer, looking down at him. His eyes, once full of fierce authority, now held a desperate, pleading look, a silent, final plea to stay alive. But I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, no sadness. I couldn't see anything in those eyes anymore. They were empty, hollow. With a final shot, I ended it. He was gone. The silence that followed felt endless, stretching out around me, swallowing every sound. I turned back, my heart racing, and saw Bara lying on the ground, motionless. And then I ran to her. My hands were empty when I ran to her, Egon left by his side as if I'd shed every last bit of hatred there on the ground with him. All I carried now was the weight of her, cradling her as I dropped beside her on the cold earth.
Hey, look at me, it's okay, I'm here.
I whispered, my voice trembling.
You'll be okay.
Her eyes met mine, their familiar warmth flickering faintly, a light fighting against the dark. I screamed into the emptiness around us.
Help!
But no one answered. It was just us in the silence, the world shrinking until it was only her and me. She drew a ragged breath and murmured,
Hilda.
Yes?
My voice broke.
Run.
Tears blurred my vision.
No, I won't leave you. I can't leave you.
I looked down, my hands trembling as they pressed against her bloody stomach, as if I could hold her together, keep her here.
You told me we'd make it together. This is what you said. If I live without you, your brother will kill me.
I choked.
You're my best friend. You're my best friend and I can't let you die.
Her hand lifted, reaching for me, still gentle and soft despite the blood that covered it. She touched my cheek. That single touch, it held every ounce of warmth, every bit of comfort she'd ever given me. Even now, when I need comfort, my right cheek remembers. Her hand slipped into her jacket, her fingers fumbling, trembling. Her voice was barely a whisper.
Open this.
With shaking hands, I reached into her jacket, finding her necklace there on her chest, a small, delicate pendant she'd always worn close to her heart. She looked at me, eyes half closed but steady, a last gift.
This is for you.
I didn't know what to do. I couldn't even find words, only tears, sobs that wrenched out of me as I clutched her closer, feeling her slipping away, feeling her spirit fading, and then, soft as a breeze, her final words.
I love you, child.
Her body stiffened in my arms and I shattered, sobbing, screaming into the dark void around us. I screamed because that was all I could do, all I had left. I screamed to hold on to her, to push away the emptiness, to drown out the silence that threatened to swallow me whole. The rain began, gentle at first, tapping against the earth until it soaked into the ground around us. The drops mingled with my tears as I held her close, my grip tightening as if I could somehow keep her here just a little longer. What did I remember most about Bauer? Her singing. I could picture her in the kitchen while I was sitting in the basement, humming softly as she washed dishes, her voice wrapping around me like a blanket when life felt cold. That rhythm was always there, steady and reassuring, like her own anthem, her own quiet rebellion against the world outside. I learned it by heart, the way it rose and fell like a sacred lullaby she carried within her. So I began to hum, letting that familiar tune fill the silence. It was all I could give her, a final lullaby for the woman who'd been my guide, my protector, my friend. I hummed for her, softly, as if the melody could ease her into peace, could shield her from the chill of the rain and the shadows around us. My voice wavered, breaking, but I kept going, hoping she could hear it wherever she was now, hoping that somehow it made her feel a little less alone.